Okay, we should be getting started here in just a minute or so.
Welcome to the webinar. You have entered as an organizer and may now speak to any other organizers or panelists on the line. When you are ready to begin the presentation, press the Start Broadcast button on the GoToWebinar control panel to allow all attendees to hear you. This system will notify you once you begin your broadcast. The broadcast is starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Welcome everybody. This is Bill Hogrewe, and all right, I'm not exactly sure what that was, but it's gone away. All right, I want to welcome everybody to the DeRISK Training Design Tool webinar on how to use that design tool that we've been working on for the past couple years. And as I said, this is Bill Hogrewe, and the project is that we're going to discuss today and hopefully we can get everything to work properly this morning. It was working just a second ago. There we go. And what I wanted to talk about a bit today is, first of all, what the purpose of the training design tool is, how that tool is structured, and how we can go about using the tool. The first thing I wanted to do was to see where folks are from and listening in. Looks like we've got about 26 people signed up, and there's going to be a poll. Looks like it's just showed up just now. So go ahead and give me click on the dot of the number that's closest to your zip code. And so if you're on the West Coast, you're going to be in the 90,000 range, and folks over on the East Coast are going to be close to 10,000, or in the have completed that. I want to put out a big thank you to Spencer, who's kind of driving the bus today from the RCAP National Office, and she's running moderating the webinar for us. So we'll leave this open for just a few more seconds and see how many. Good deal. How many responses do we have so far?
Just closed it. We had 92% voted, 30% are in the 10,000 range, 22% in the 30,000 range, 4% in the 50,000, 17% in the 70,000, and 26% in the 90,000. I'll post those results in the chat feature as well.
Fantastic. Okay, so it looks like we're a little sparse in the middle of the country, but that's okay. We can we're recording this so that folks everywhere can look at it again. While we're in the webinar, what I wanted to point out to you was that if you're running out off of a PC and I think maybe a Mac, you should have a control panel over on the right-hand side, and there's a chat function. And over on that side, you can type in your chat comments and so on and so forth. We will look at it, and we'll be asking you for various things over the course of the webinar. Looks like Spencer's results up there, and there are the results themselves as to what our distribution on zip codes look like. So while we're during the webinar, if anytime you have a question or a comment, or the audio is going in and out, or you've got some problems, go ahead and put it in the chat function there, and we'll address. So the first thing I want to do is talk about what the purpose of the tool is, and why did we develop this, and where are we going with it. So the main purpose is for the stakeholders of small communities that are looking at new technologies to include in their drinking water treatment systems, to provide them with enough information so that they can make good decisions about what technologies to choose. And one of the underlying purposes of this is to be able to have an informed group of stakeholders participate in the decisions support methodology that we're developing as another part of the DeRISK work. So the tool, the way we put it together, is for use by experienced technical assistance providers and trainers, so folks that are familiar with the technologies and are also familiar with training techniques. And so those are the people that are going to be, this particular tool is directed at, and so that they can use it to develop trainings to inform their stakeholders. And let's see, this is using learning objectives. And the learning objectives that we're using are the first two levels of the Bloom's taxonomy. So we're not going into a tremendous amount of detail, and we're not requiring folks to be able to essentially operate these systems. It's just so that they understand the characteristics of the system so they can make good decisions about it. So those two levels are to remembering and understanding. And so you won't see a lot of things in there like the actual dosage equations, but you will see things like how the fact that a technology does have a dosage equation that you have to use. So the stakeholders that we identified that these trainings are directed at are the folks that are making decisions about what technologies to put into their systems. So they include water systems managers and the boards, the councils, the folks that govern the water system. Then there are also the regulatory and primacy agency personnel that are in charge of approving and working with systems to stay in compliance with regulations. Another stakeholder group is the funders that need to understand what a system is looking at putting in to solve some of their compliance issues or to solve some of their capacity issues. Operators are a big part of the decision process, so they're included in here, and along with regulatory and design engineers. So these two groups of folks that are much more technically oriented, we've got an even more detailed training tool that is used to develop a day-long training. The training tool we're going to talk about today is just for a 90-minute training, so an hour and a half, and it doesn't have as much detail. But we've got another tool that we're finishing up that has much more detail in it. And finally, the technical assistance providers that help these communities make decisions about things. One thing that I wanted to point out was that some of these stakeholders see this maybe once every 10 years, 30 years, however often they have to replace their technologies. But then some of the other stakeholders see it on a monthly, weekly, or maybe even a daily basis that they're looking at this. So there's a bit of a challenge to get the level of detail right for such a wide range of stakeholder experience. So how is this tool structured? There's three main pieces of it. The first piece is a data sheet that is used to help with gathering information on the technology that will subsequently be used in the presentations. And this is a form to fill out that helps you remember what information you need to gather about the technology. The second piece is a facilitator outline that really is a roadmap or a blueprint of how the training needs to take place, and includes all the exercises and the structure and timing and things like that. And then the third piece are the presentation slides and the handout materials that it gives you a template, you fill that out using the information from the data sheet. So it makes it a bit easier where you don't have to start from absolute zero. The topics that are covered in the training is these topics are we'll go into much more detail a little bit later in the presentation, but the topics are basically what are the contaminants that are being addressed by the technology, and then some background on those contaminants, things like where does it come from, why is it a concern, and what are some of the physical and chemical characteristics of those contaminants. There's also a section on overview of the technology that gives you an idea of what a flow diagram for it looks like, and some pictures of it, and some of the physical and chemical principles of how this technology works. And again, in this hour and a half version, it's a very high level general discussion of the technology, whereas in the day-long piece, we go into a bit more detail about it. But I should stress that the day-long training still is not what I would consider an operator training, which trains people how to operate the facility, just to know more about it so they can make good decisions about it still. The next topic that's in there is how this technology differs from some of the other technologies that might be used to treat the same contaminant. There's a section on the advantages and disadvantages of the technology. There is a whole section on the operation and maintenance of the technology, so that the folks that are trying to decide whether this technology is a good one for them or not know what needs to go into operating and maintaining it. There's a section on expected costs, and I think we've all run into the issues that we have with finding good cost data for technologies. And if we're looking at a technology that hasn't been used very much, it's even harder to find that kind of information. Another piece that's discussed in there are the failure modes. So what happens when this technology fails? What happens to the downstream processes, and what happens to the quality of the water that it's producing? We include a section on examples of where the technology has been used, as well as what's been approved in other states, and what sorts of conditions were put on that approval. So let's take a look at how the tool is then used. And I've divided it up into three main activities, and then the final one is putting everything together. So the first one is taking this technology characteristics and operating data sheet and filling out all that information. We'll go through that, and I'll show you what's in it. The next step is to complete the facilitator's outline, and that's put everything together so that you can see what your training is going to look like, what the timing needs to be, and what the activities need to be, and what information needs to be put into the slides. And then finally is to take and populate those presentation slides, make sure you got all your handout material together. And then the fourth thing is we put all that together in a package, which can then you use it and then put it on the shelf for the next time you need it, or you can develop it for someone else to use, and they've got all the information that they need, as long as they are technically competent and experienced trainers. Okay, so Spencer got the next poll question to come up here. And by the way, in webinars, we try to use some of those same techniques that we use in face-to-face trainings. And so in this case, we're using poll questions and chat function and a couple of other things to try to engage the participants in this training. So this is a training on training, and so we need to do this stuff to keep you folks awake out there. So the poll question is, have you worked with communities considering changes in their drinking water treatment system? And you've got 3 different selections there, and go ahead and start punching those in. And Spencer, let me know when we've got a decent number of we've got 31 folks signed up right now. And we should all be clicking merrily away there.
All right, folks, we'll leave it open for a few more seconds. All right, so 29% of you voted.
One thing I wanted.
Yes. Go ahead.
Oh no, go ahead. Go ahead and give the results.
29% of you voted yes, working on 1 or more now. 46% voted yes, have worked on 1 or more in the past, and 25% of you voted no.
All right, that's good. So this should be useful. Let's hope so. So I'm seeing that now you can see those results on the screen. That's pretty cool. And so what I wanted to say was that some of you may be looking at this on your telephone or your pad or your mobile device of some kind. And just for grins, I opened it up on one that I've got, and it's a very different landscape. Yep,
Bill, we
it just
also
made
have
it.
a
Okay,
question.
good. Oh yeah, okay.
The question is this tool designed for both water and wastewater, or only water?
It is only designed for water. I was thinking about it the other day that you could use the skeleton of it to be able to do some training on wastewater technologies, but the questions that you would need to ask for in your populating your characteristics thing would be different, and some of the slides would be different on how you approach it. But I think just the rough framework of it could be useful for designing wastewater trainings. And we probably should. I know that Joy is on the webinar, and Jeff isn't. He's or he may not be. He wasn't supposed to be. He's supposed to be on vacation. Jeff are out of the national office, and they're the training gurus, and I'll just kind of push that off to them to look for funding to develop this for the wastewater side of things. Any other questions, Spencer? All right, hearing none, I'm going to go ahead and move on to looking at the first piece of this. So filling out file that you can open from there, or you can go to all the files that I sent you attached to the email that I sent earlier. And but what I'm going to do is go ahead and open up that file on my computer so you can see it, and it has disappeared. Well, drat. All right, so we're gonna find it here. We're gonna do a quick fix, and find there it is right there. That's not it. If you could see, my embarrassment is, nope, that's not it. There it is right there. Okay, good. And actually I can hear Joy yelling through the heating vent from her office. All right, so here's what this document looks like. Let me increase the size of that a little bit. And so it's just a form that you go and fill out. These are expanding boxes, and you go through the contaminant part of the thing and get the details about the contaminant. And actually, let me go back to the slides and catch my breath here real quickly. And while you're looking at that, the document that you've got open, so the stuff on the form, it's got information about the technology and the contaminants that are addressed as you flip through there. And then you can look at the one thing that may come to mind is what level of detail is needed on this. Well, that depends on who your audience is going to be. So if you're going to be training operators and engineers, you're going to want to be gathering much more data and much more information on the technology than if you're just dealing with the first level of management folks. And where do you get that information? Well, there's a number of different places that you can go to look for it. One of the big ones is your personal experience. And you'll notice in there that there are places for putting a reference of where that information came from. If it's your personal experience, put it down as you just got it from personal experience. That way, when you go back and look at this or somebody else goes and looks at it, they can tell where it came from and can go back and get more information on it if they need to. EPA website has a lot of good information on it. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention website has got real good information on the contaminants and where they come from and their impacts on folks. Vendors may have the information. Some of the design data comes from engineering textbooks. You can also get some operating procedures and so on and so forth from operator training materials. And there are some technical publications out there that you can use to determine some of the finer details about a technology. Now, if you're working with a new or innovative technology, you may have to go to the researchers and talk to them about it, or to the vendors that are looking at promoting this particular technology to get your information. So what else? The thing that I said before, make sure that you put down the source for the information that you're gathering. And when we look at the example, you'll be able to see where how I did that with a fairly simple example of a technology. Okay, so let's go ahead and go to another poll question. And I know that you're sitting at your computer, and I know that maybe you've seen some email things come flying in. So why don't you go ahead and check your email and go ahead and do it now. And but hurry back from it, and then when you get done checking it, go ahead and click on the poll question there and answer which one of those three is a good indication of where you are. All right, muted that, got myself a drink of water, and if you want to look at what an idealized webinar presentation might look like, in the summer issue of Rural Matters, this summer issue of Rural Matters, if you go to the contents page, there is a looks like a Norman Rockwell painting of Jim McVeigh from RCAC sitting there doing a webinar or doing an online training. So that's what things ideal would look like. Jim's desk is much neater than mine, and he's a whole lot more dapper than I am too. So, but you get a chance to look at that Rural Matters. There's some other good stuff in there too, and that's thanks to Spencer putting that in there. So Spencer, do we have results on that poll? Or is everybody checking their email for a lot longer than I thought?
We do. I will close that right now. There's also another question posed for you in the chat.
Oh, wait a minute. So no, I would never, 48% of you weren't checking your email? Okay. So, so what's the question, Spencer?
Will this tech chart and operating data be centralized so that we don't have to always generate it?
Ooh, that's a good question. The plan was to archive these as people did them, and you know, someplace centralized, you know, perhaps in the RCAP office. And I think that that would be a good follow-on activity for all the training folks there in the RCAP national office. So Joy, if you're listening, go ahead and put a little note to yourself about that, and I'll figure out how we can do that. But that is something that we had thought of that would be a good way to do it. The issues with that is the being able to moderate that kind of database and make sure that the information that's in there is good quality stuff. But it helps you where you don't have to start from nothing, and you've got things to go from. So that's a good question. Anything else?
That's all we've got for the moment.
All right. It looks like I've got control again here, and let me go ahead and figure out how to make that work. Okay, so the next piece of this thing, so you've gathered all these data together and all the information about the technology, and now it's time to go to the roadmap and take a look at that real quickly. And you can go and again, it's in the handout section. So it's the 90-minute training DeRISK training design tool facilitator outline final. Don't do the example one, you'll be jumping ahead. You can look at that over there in the handouts, or you can look at it in the stuff that I sent to you. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and show you what this thing looks like. So now this document is not one that you do a lot of filling it out, but it helps you guide you through the rest of the development of the training materials. So inside this facilitated outline, we're going to find that there's a schedule. It's got the topics, list of topics. It's got a detailed description of the activities and how long things need to take, and what sort of materials you need to have with you. And then there's some learning assessment stuff, like pre and post tests and follow-up contacts and all the typical things that you would normally find in a training that we need to do. So here's what this little thing looks like. It's, like I said, there's 6 sections. An introduction, talking about section 2 talks about the contaminants. Section 3 is an overview of the treatment technology. We're going to go into much more detail in section 3 here in just a second. Section 4 is the cost section. Section 5 talks about, it's taking a while to up. Technology has been implemented and how is it approved. And then section 6 talks about other technologies that do the same thing. So let's take a back to that section 3 and take a look at the pieces that go into this as an example of all the other sections that are in the design tool. So the first piece is these 4 columns over on the left-hand side, and what they do is they talk about timing. In this case, I started everything at 8 o'clock, and so this is 15 minutes into the technology is you're going to be talking about. It's 15 minutes long, and there's the 2 learning objectives for this section. And in this case, it's being able to, in good learning objective language, to be able to demonstrate an understanding of the unit operation in the technology. And the next one is to be able to identify important O&M details of the treatment technology. And so let's go back to that second page of the doc. So this tells you the timings. So the first section is 10 minutes long, and that's the presentation. And the topics that included are in there are the ones that we had mentioned about operations and maintenance and so on and so forth. The second section of this second part of section 3 then is going to be an activity. And in this case, it's a large group discussion. And some of them are going to have small group discussions, and some have large group discussions, some have other kinds of activities. And this gives some hints and things to the trainer on what to look for and what to kind of prompt folks so that they are exposed once again to the topics that were discussed. Are that are needed for this section. So you got the PowerPoint presentation for the section, you got the handout with the flow diagram, and you got flip charts and markers. Now you may want to add in there a standard operating procedure or something like that to hand out to people, or there may be some other things that the trainer will customize the materials that they take. Now this particular block is, I found, very Now I've unmuted myself and I think I'm back in business.
Bill, you should be good to go now. I apologize.
Looks like it. Okay. Great. So it sounds like we lost internet connection there in the national office, and but we did a good catch and got it back. So as I was saying, so the activity in here is a large group discussion, and I think the last thing that I pointed out was the fact that we've got the technical systems provider on the right, the Indian Health Service engineer in the center, and over on the left we've got a community member and the operator, all in the picture. So let's go ahead and go on to the last slide of the section of the template. Has got a place where you put all sorts of reference materials and things that you want folks to be able to get to. So let's look at an example. So I took a simple sodium hypochlorite disinfection and went through the exercise of filling out the data sheet and using that to populate all of the information that we saw on the templates. So again, I've got some files. I was only able to provide you with 2 of these files because we have a limited number of handouts that we connect to the webinar, but I have sent you all of these via email. So if you would like to open up these files, or I can just do it here on my computer. So the first thing we're going to do is look at the data sheet, and then we're going to look at the facilitator guide. And these are the 2 that are over there in the handout piece. So let me go ahead and open up those files for you. And so let's see, here we go. All right, so this is what the technology characteristics and operating data sheet looks like for a simple sodium hypochlorite disinfection. And the stuff I've put in there is in red. So we come down here to the contaminants that are addressed. And so I just put in some information about, well, what is it that's after? And what other contaminants might be treated. In this case, I put in taste and odor. You could also put in things about as part of an iron and manganese treatment or something like that. And then provided a brief background of the contaminants. And this information I got from, as you can note down at the bottom, I got it from CDC and also from EPA. And then I provided a link for where that information came from. So in the future, I won't wonder what was going on with that. So then the next piece of this, sorry to be jumping around a bit, is the overview of the treatment technology. And that'll come up here in just a second. There you go. And so this is a write-up of the treatment technology that I got out of various places of what happens when you add chlorine to water, what are some of the things that are important, things like pH and what happens if you've got some total organic carbon in there, all the stuff that you need to get across to the stakeholders. And once again, at the bottom I put the source where that came from. So most of this came from an EPA website. Next piece is on operation and maintenance. And so here's a piece that a lot of this came from from personal experience, but I also found a nice document on the Ohio EPA website on sodium hypochlorite disinfection. So I included the link to that in there, but I pulled out the important components of that piece that you're going to want to put into your training. When asked about the circumstances that may make this technology unfeasible, if your total organic carbon concentrations go up in your source water, then you may have some disinfection byproduct formation issues with that kind of disinfection. Next section is on other technologies and how they compare. along with the advantages and disadvantages. So most of this stuff I put down from personal experience, but then I also had some information from EPA's treatability database. Anticipated costs, went ahead and pulled out some information from catalogs and stuff like that, and put that cost information in there, inclusion in the trainings. Next question had to do with what are the operating parameters that have the largest impact on costs? And so I put those in there. And again, that was based on some personal experience stuff. Where has the technology been used before? Well, the question there probably is where hasn't it been used? And so there's lots of stuff there. And then the final question, 7, 8, pilot testing. And so if you've got that kind of information, you would add that to the data sheet. Design parameters, what are not necessarily what do they need to be, but what are those parameters that you should consider? And those I got out of an engineering textbook. And so some of you folks that have been around for a while will know what SANCS is in terms of an engineering text. And then listed some of the current vendors of a disinfection, sodium hypochlorite disinfection. So LMI and Grundfos are the main ones that you'll see out there. The last section of the data sheet has to do with that decision support methodology piece, and it's these, you don't need to fill these necessarily for the training part of things, but I stuck this in here in case you're going to be doing the decision support piece. All right, so that is the data sheet, and the next thing that we want to look at is the facilitator's outline, which is right here. That you put in here is the name of the but if you wanted to add some pieces over here that might be important for your particular audience, you can go ahead and add that into your facilitator outline. So this one doesn't look very different at all than the template, because there wasn't much I needed to add to it. So let's go on to of what disinfection does, and some details about sodium hypochlorite. In this case, I wanted to point out that it does come in liquid form, and it's injected into the water using a metering pump. So those are some of the important components of it. For a diagram for this technology, I just used a simple drawing from some trainings that we had done before. Unfortunately, the well kind of looks like more like a chlorine cylinder than a well, but that's the well. And then there's chlorination put in at various points in the process, and you can use that to explain to folks how you would put that together. Now, in terms of some pictures and graphics and stuff like that, I went and dug up some line drawing type of thing from Sacramento manuals of an older version of what a hypochlorinator might look like, with a metering pump and a day tank and injection ports and stuff like that. So this is the kind of thing that you would pull together to be able to show people what the equipment looks like. You can also come up with some photographs. The one on the left is a fairly modern, although not completely constructed hypochlorinator, and then the one on the right there is a much simpler, cruder type of hypochlorinator, but still gets the job done. So the next slide in the slide bank talks about the physical and chemical principles of operation. So in this case, I decided that the users didn't need to know about pH and all those other things. All they needed to know is that when you add sodium hypochlorite to the water, it forms a compound that kills many pathogenic organisms, and many being the operative term there. And that there's also an important consideration for contact time and chlorine concentration, and that chlorine concentration is one of your main, if not the main knob that the operator can turn in order to run the process effectively. Now, for operation requirements, in this case, I pulled out and said, okay, you're going to get a handout that has typical SOPs. And so you know what needs to go into operating the facility. And you might have folks look at that later, or you might talk about it with them during the training if you've got time to be able to do that, or if you have interest from your participants. In this case, I pointed out that usually the lowest level of operator certification is adequate for a hypochlorite disinfection system. And then what happens if it fails? Well, if it fails, then the water's not safe to drink, and so you're going to have to take certain steps. And a couple of the steps would be to notify the primacy agency and your users. There's going to be obviously going to be other steps that you're going to need to take that you can discuss with folks, such as minimizing water usage if you've got disinfectant water in a tank and you can still use that, and so on and so forth. So some more operating requirements, things like the fact that you do have to do a dosage calculation. And it's based on flow rate and the strength of your hypochlorite solution, and what sort of chlorine demand you've got and what residual you're wanting to maintain in the system. You're also going to have to monitor the chlorine residual. So this is an important thing to point out to folks in this training, is that's one of the things that they're going to have to do, and that if you're going to be storing the sodium hypochlorite, there's certain things that you need to take into consideration, such as how long you keep it, what temperature it's stored at, and how you store it safely. So these are all important issues or important factors for people to consider when they are looking at this particular technology. Some more maintenance requirements. What sort of spare parts do you need to keep for the different main components, and what maintenance activities do you have to perform on those components? So rebuilding the pump, cleaning the injection port, and things like that. And finally, there's a requirement that you measure the chlorine residual. So you got to be cognizant of your expiration date on your reagents, and also if you want to really be good at it, you will use standards for your measurement. We get back to that. The next slide in there, once again, there it is going to be the activity where in the training, you facilitate a discussion of it to bring out those O&M details, to refresh with people what they were that you just went over, and to help them understand what might be important to them. And then the final slide is the reference materials that went into the putting together the presentation and stuff that they might want to use in the future. So I put a couple of NESE publications in there, and then that Ohio EPA pub is also in there. So that's the end of those example slides that I've got. And keep in mind that I sent you via email the other 5 sections, both the templates, the blank ones, as well as the ones that are filled out for the sodium hypochlorite disinfection process. So we sum all of this stuff up. what we do is put it all together in that package where you've got the data sheet that's got all the information that you gathered. You've got the facilitator's outline that tells you what you need to take with you and what the learning objectives and what the timing needs to be on the sessions as you present them. You've got your presentation slides all populated and ready to go, and you've got your handout materials identified and put out, and you should be good to go to do your training. And once again, I want to remind everybody that there will be a full day version of this training template that's that we'll be putting out by the end of July, and we are almost done with it. And I think with that, it looks like I am right on time, so we can allow ourselves a bit of time for discussion. And so if you want to go ahead and stick some stuff in that chat box there, that would be great. And as it comes up, Spencer can be letting me know what those questions might be or what the comments might be and suggestions for improvement. And what I want to leave you with though is if you need to get in touch with us, there is some contact information for us, and for both Joy and myself. Either one of us can answer your questions, and we're anxiously awaiting, although probably not as anxiously as those pups are waiting for their treats. So Spencer, do we have any questions? Well, it's nice and quiet out there. Looks like we've still got 27 people hooked up. Oh, wait, what's this? Oh, very good. All right. Well, Spencer, if you're there, can you just give me a little acknowledgement and let me know that you are looking at the chat box. Yeah, I don't see anything yet. I'm gonna try.
Bill, can you hear me? Bill, can you hear me now?
Okay, I just got a message from Spencer, who is having trouble unmuting herself. And
Bill,
I
can you
can't
hear me
see
now?
the chat things. Oh, yay. Hi, Spencer. How are you?
Sorry about that. We do have a couple questions. So Andy wanted to say nice job, by the way. But also, Tommy, just to answer your question, we will send out all the handout materials again to everyone who is in attendance to make sure that you guys got them, since a couple of you were missed in the initial email. So I'll make sure everyone gets those too. We have another question.
Oh no, I'm sorry. I can't send stuff to Tommy. If Tommy didn't get it the first time, I can't send him more stuff.
The other question we have, the tool is effectively the 2-word documents to fill out and the template slides. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
That is the only other question that I have here.
All right. Well, I really appreciate everybody showing up, and we will send all this stuff out again so that you've got it. And if anybody wants this the slide presentation that I did today, I'll go ahead and attach that too, although it's a little bit bigger file, and send it to folks as well. Oh, it just popped up. The questions just popped up. Are there any others that pop up? I don't see any.
That's all we have.
So Spencer, I guess if that's all we got, then we'll go ahead and close this out. And once again, thank you everybody, and please get in touch with us and let us know if we can help you with a training on any technologies that you might be doing out in your regions. All right. Well, I'm going to sign off, and everybody else have a good afternoon.